Hello and welcome to FFRF's Ask an Atheist. I'm Leo Costello, multimedia producer here at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. We're back from a brief hiatus during the busy holiday week season, and this week we're talking with a prominent science communicator on YouTube who's taken on the challenge of debunking creationism. Joining me is in studio is Chris Line, one of our staff attorneys. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Hey, good. How you doing?
Good. Do you want to tell us how our viewers can
as always, we want to hear your thoughts on the topics we discussed today. So please leave your questions for us or our guest in the chat below, or you can email them to askanatheist@ffrf.org. We'll try our best to answer your questions live during the show.
All right, and joining us today is Dave Farina, creator behind the popular YouTube channel, Professor Dave Explains. With a background in science education and a knack for making complex topics accessible, Dave has amassed a following of more than 3.5 million subscribers, engaging videos, everything from chemistry to history, and recently he's turned his attention to debunking creationism in an in-depth 3-hour long video series. Welcome to the show, Dave, and congrats. I think you just celebrated your 10-year anniversary on the channel. Is that right?
I did. Yeah, just a few days ago. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, time flies. I've been a frequent viewer of YouTube since I want to say 2006, and it's wild to see some of the earlier stuff still on there and just how long it's been around. So it's been quite a wild ride these past 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. And I got into it, I would say, a little bit on the early side, but nevertheless, there were channels that were way before me. I mean, there was, Khan Academy and Crash Course and these kinds of things that were already very well established, which is kind of what inspired me to make the channel. I looked around and thought, well, people are doing this. People are explaining science on YouTube, so why can't I do it? So, yeah.
So for our viewers who are not familiar with your work, can you give us just a brief background on your education and what led you to choosing to become a science communicator on YouTube?
Sure. I studied chemistry. I did a bachelor's in chemistry at Carleton College, and then was enrolled in a master's program in synthetic organic chemistry a couple of times, actually. Eventually switched to science education after I'd already started the channel. But I initially, throughout my 20s, I was just teaching chemistry just to earn money. I'm a musician and was heavily focused on music in my 20s, and that was just kind of the best way to earn a living. And then was looking for some passive income because I was in a touring band, and I thought, let me put my organic chemistry lectures. I had been teaching organic chemistry at a trade university here in the LA area for about 4 years, so I had my lectures really dialed in, and I thought I'll deliver them to camera as though I'm teaching class, and I'll put them on YouTube, and who knows, maybe people will care, maybe I can make a buck that way. And it really took off, and that led me to make more content and more different subjects, and here we are 10 years later. So.
Yeah, and your content, I think, does a really good job at simplifying very complex ideas, and you have like a library of very simple, almost clip art kind of images to help illustrate your points. And
That's right.
I think reusing those in each of your videos establishes sort of a language within your content that helps the learning process. There's your channel up there if you want to check it out.
There are certain images that I tend to reuse over and over again, not even really intentionally. It's just that when I'm like, oh, I want to use a particular image. Oh, I remember that one that I've used so many times. And then people start to know, they almost become memes, like the angry kid yelling. And
right there on your you just saw on your screen, was just a list of some of the playlists you have up of all the different kind of topics you've covered. So what fields would you say you're the most experienced or interested in general?
Sure. So those two answers would primarily overline, I think. I studied chemistry, so my expertise is chemistry and then things that are directly adjacent to chemistry. So biochemistry, biology to an extent, certain areas of physics, math, astronomy. And so most of I'm very interested in chemistry, of course, and astronomy is something that has always fascinated me. But it very quickly turned into the task of trying to cover as many academic subjects as humanly possible. So once I exhausted my expertise, I started hiring professionals to write the scripts for me. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to outsource the post-production. I still have to make all the videos myself. But being able to hire people to write scripts in areas like economics and history and things that, I didn't study. I'm a math and science guy. So, but I wanted the channel to become a database of truly every academic subject slowly over the decades. I mean, this project is going to take me my whole life, I think. But yeah, it's just something I work on day by day.
So what led you to deviate from your typical educational content to debunking people like flat earthers and other pseudosciences and grifters? By the way, I want to say I've been really enjoying your latest videos on Terrence Howard. I had no idea he was so crazy. And 1 + 1 equals, what did he say? 1 + 1 equals
1 × 1 = 2.
And 1 × 1 = 2. Yeah. Crazy,
Which
but
is,
it's very entertaining watching you go through that stuff. But I'm curious,
Yes.
what led you to start going towards that kind of content?
Yeah, so it was not initially my intention. I was making an astronomy series, which was basically just teaching Astro 101 concepts, what you would learn freshman year in college. And I decided to have a little fun, and I wrapped it up with 2 little videos, one debunking astrology and one debunking flat Earth. And honestly, I thought the astrology one might be a little bit more controversial. I thought I'd get a lot of, astrologers hating on me, but that didn't really happen. But the flat Earth video, and I'll admit it up front, I didn't look into anything about flat Earth. I didn't look up what they say or what they think or anything like that. I just had heard that there were some people that thought the Earth is flat. So I made a little video kind of recapitulating concepts through the astronomy series, regarding how we observe the celestial spheres, things like that, how we know that how we've known the Earth is a sphere for 2,500 years, basically. And this group called the Globe Busters, that video went to the top search result for the flat Earth keyword the day it posted. The group called the Globe Busters found it and thought, oh, we're going to dunk on this guy. And they made a 3-hour live stream just really viciously attacking me and insulting me.
Yeah, it was very mean-spirited. I watched a bit of that. Yeah.
And this was 2019. So today, I mean, every single day of my life, I'm constantly attacked, and people make videos about me, about it. So I'm used to it now. But at the time, that had never happened before, and I was just kind of taken aback. I was like, why are they saying this about me? And I'm a very vindictive fellow, so I thought I'm going to take their little 3-hour live stream, and I chopped it up, and I made a 45-minute video. But I look back on it now, and it's very playful, the tone. I'm much more vicious now, but I would, kind of mocking them and teaching some lessons and things. And it exploded. The people loved the video so much, and to this day, it's the most viewed video on my channel by a lot. And I thought, well, this was really fun to make. I'm really good at it. And people love it. They want to watch it. And I'm getting the feedback views wise. So I made a couple more. Cautiously, I made a couple more little flat Earth ones, and I thought, okay, I don't want to veer too far from the mission statement of the channel, creating these academic tutorials, but this is too fun to not do. And then eventually I thought, well, flat Earth is the lowest hanging fruit imaginable. What else can I tackle? Because I became very passionate about science denial in society and in its myriad forms. And so definitely, creationism, which I'm sure we're going to talk about here, it became another primary target, along with other pseudoscience like electric universe and quantum mysticism and just all kinds of things. Some are more cultural, some are more institutionalized, but just anything I could sink my teeth into. And so now these are the 2 halves of my channel, the tutorials and the debunks, and I pay a lot of attention to both aspects.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love the debunking stuff. I think that's so important, just because I'm science-minded, but I don't have the background necessary. So I know that the Earth is not flat, but it's I don't have those arguments on hand. So it's nice to have a quick and simple video to be like, hey, watch this video. Dave can explain it to you. I don't have to take my time doing that, and it'll be done in a succinct way that really anyone can understand, whether they've got a good science background or not.
It's also just really satisfying to watch someone who has those arguments to just put them in their place.
Right.
There's a catharsis to it for a lot of people, I think, where they just are frustrated by hearing these things, but they don't immediately have the arguments to counter this nonsense. So I just, in 5 minutes, it can't possibly be more succinct or clear. Look at the stars. Rotate this way in the northern hemisphere. Rotate this way in the southern hemisphere. explain that on a flat Earth. You can't do it.
Right. No,
that kind of a thing.
Yeah, because like I can definitely I understand. I watched your whole video series on debunking creationism, and I understand everything you're saying. Could I repeat it and explain it to someone? Probably not. And certainly I couldn't stand up to like questioning. Like if I were in an argument with someone about it, I understand why it's true, but I don't have those arguments to like fight back. And so having someone like you out there, putting that out there for everyone, making it easy to share, easy to understand, is just awesome.
And that's the video we're most curious about. That's why we reached out to you. It's you had a 5-part series you released a few months ago called The Definitive Guide to Debunking Creationists. It's already the first result if you type in Debunking Creationism on YouTube. I don't know if you know that. I experimented
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's great news.
I experimented with a computer of someone that didn't know who you were before. And I was like, hey, can you type in Debunking Creationism? It was the first result. So,
amazing.
Yeah, I'm curious, what inspired you to take on that project? And did you ever worry that it would lead some people away from your other educational content?
No, I think it marvelously complements the other educational material, because if I'm describing some concepts in geology or biology or whatever it is, I'm actually, I think even in the series, constantly referring to my tutorials saying, if you want more information on this topic, look at these tutorials that expand in great detail. The reason I did the series, I was not new to debunking creationism. I had been doing this for a while, but I had been targeting individuals and exposing them and exposing their lies, which is incredibly important, and I'm going to continue doing that. But I thought it would be useful to make a separate resource where just all of the most popular talking points were just condensed in one area, so that you don't have to watch 15 different videos of mine and listen to me talk about the background of a particular individual, right? We just want to get down to the actual talking points and arm the viewer with the ability to counter these talking points in their own life. So it's not an expose, it's a resource, right? If you're going to do a debate with a creationist, if you have a creationist in your family, whatever it is, here's most of the things probably, I tried to get as many as I could. There's probably a few missing, but almost everything that they possibly are going to say, and here's your response, right? This is how we know that this is not a legitimate talking point. And so, yeah, I worked pretty hard on that. It didn't get quite as many views as, say, like Debunking Discovery Institute or something, because it lacks that kind of like little bit of extra drama of the expose. But I wanted to make it regardless. I just thought this is going to be a very neat and tidy resource, and hopefully over the years it will accumulate a lot of views and get circulated, and I'm pretty proud of it. So
yeah, of course you're not the first person to take on the topic, but you certainly have a unique visual and teaching style that is unique to you. So let's play a short clip of the beginning of your video to sort of show our audience how the video is put together.
Sure. As most of you are aware, I've been debunking creationists for quite some time. In fact, at this point, I'm familiar with just about everything that they say, from the most clueless preacher to the most sophisticated and well-funded propaganda peddler. Because of this, I thought it would be worth my time to create an in-depth series debunking virtually every creationist talking point, which others can use as a handy resource. Instead of focusing on debunking specific creationists, this series will focus on the things they collectively say. So the purpose of the series is not to expose anyone in particular, but rather to arm the viewer with the ability to immediately discredit anything a creationist says. You may find this useful if you're going to debate a creationist, or if you have a creationist in your family and you're tired of their misinformed lectures over dinner. Whatever the case may be, if you need a handy guide to combating creationists, this is the place for you. Positing the general existence of a deity is a philosophical position that can't be firmly proven or disproven in any empirical manner, so this series will make no attempt to do so. Instead, we will be focusing on the firmly established scientific principles that creationists deny to one degree or another. Obviously, some of the discussion will apply more broadly to all categories, and some only to young Earth creationists, as there are things which that ideology denies that intelligent design proponents do not deny. But we will attempt to go over virtually everything that all of these groups propose, and how to expose the dishonesty behind them.
So Dave, you make a point at the end of that clip that the existence of a deity is a position that can't be firmly proven or disproven, but your series is intended in tackling specifically the scientific principles that simply fly in the face of religious texts. I'm curious, why was that an important thing for you to make a distinction of?
Well, yeah, because I combat science denial, right? Evangelicals who lie about biology and geology, right? This is hugely problematic in society in a way that a belief in God is not. That is not the same thing, right? That I don't view a mere belief in God as problematic. So I definitely didn't want to alienate anyone, because it's not that all theists are creationists, right? It's specifically creationism that is a problematic. Creationism is science denial. A belief in God, a generalized belief in God, is not science denial. So yeah, I felt that distinction was important.
And does your video specifically focus on the Christian story of creationism, or does it apply to other faiths as well?
I mean, it's pretty broadly applicable. I have done content on Muslim creationists as well, and they use all the same talking points. In fact, they're constantly referencing Discovery Institute members and things like that. I mean, it really the particulars of, oh, it's a 7-day creation versus a thing. None of that matters, right? If you're denying the scientific explanation of the origin of the solar system and of life, and the diversity of life and things like that, it really doesn't matter what the fable is, what the myth is that you're peddling. You're denying that aspect of empirical science. I do admit that I certainly lean towards Christian evangelical talking points, because that is who is influential in America, which is the country that I live in. But it's broadly applicable.
Sure. So would it be correct to say that your position is that there's no way to believe in creationism that aligns with what we know about our universe? Or is there a way, is there a path for that, in your view?
No, there is no path for that. And to be clear, right, we have to be clear about the definitions of terms, right? We're talking creationism is different from theistic or deistic evolution, right? Deistic evolution, the belief that there is a God that triggered that created the universe, and then that's really the end of that's the end of that the rest unfolded according to scientific principles. That's not the same as creation, right? So somebody believing that there is a God that created the universe, that's not what I'm talking about when I say creationism, right? I'm talking about there's a God who went poof, and now there's the earth, and went poof, and now here's all the life existing exactly as it does today. That's anti-science. That contradicts what we know about the world empirically. So,
yeah, there's a bit more about that I want to get into in a little bit. But first, I just wanted to mention you split up this project into 5 parts: cosmology and planetary science, abiogenesis, evolutionary biology and paleontology, genetics and molecular biology, and philosophy and theology. So what led you to divide your argument into these categories, and which categories do you think are the most compelling? Are there any of those that you think make a better argument against creationism or not, or do you see them as all equal?
Definitely parts 3 and 4 would be the most compelling, because that contains kind of the meat and potatoes of all the creationist talking points of youth. If we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys, and all this ridiculous stuff. It's a concise explanation of, I think that when people fall for creationist talking points, it's because they don't have a clear understanding of phylogeny and the main tenets of the main aspects of evolutionary biology, which are really not clear to certain aspects of the public. And then certainly once you start getting into genetics and embryonic development and things like that, there's just so much there that can clarify what science actually says, which is abused by creationists. I think that when you go to like cosmology and planetary science, right, there's still a lot to talk about there, but that doesn't have anything to do with the development of biological organisms on Earth, right? They're completely separate topics. So I wanted to cover it all, but I thought let's divide it into chapters that are themed on particular scientific disciplines, just for ease of navigation, really.
Yeah, and what sources did you use when researching for this video series?
I mean, this is all very basic high school biology textbook stuff. I mean, it's really not. I mean, except for abiogenesis. Abiogenesis is obviously much more complicated science, and so. But I had already done all of that research to debunk James Tour, who is a evangelical an evangelical chemist who rages against origin of life research. And so I had done copious amounts of research for that. And so I pulled from that content and pulled some of those sources and put them in the description of that particular video. But that's the only area that relies on primary scientific literature. The rest is just, I mean, we're genuinely talking about things that you were supposed to learn in ninth grade, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people just weren't paying attention or something. Yeah.
Well, in some states, it's pretty hard to get your hands on that kind of education, and that's a part of what we're fighting for here at the FFRF. A lot of scientific education is being suppressed because it doesn't fall in line with the religious beliefs of the children's parents. Hence, you get the parents' rights arguments and all that.
Okay.
Can you offhand give us some of your favorite facts that go against the argument for creationism? Are there any that you just enjoy to put out there?
I mean,
not to put you on the spot.
Problem, yeah, I mean, it's hard to just summarize in a soundbite. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It requires diving into geology. What is the geological column? What does this say? Right? What does the fossil record say? Right? It really has to. It really relies on going into the distortions that creationists put forward and undermining those by offering an understanding of these principles. But I mean, I think some of the most important stuff is talking about phylogeny and helping people understand that evolution is about very small changes gradually over time, and that there's no. I think that a lot of people don't understand that evolution doesn't suggest that any extant animals that are existing today are supposed to give birth to other extant animals, right? As Kent Hovind would say, why can't a lion give birth to a porcupine or something, right? It's just a complete distortion of evolutionary biology. We're talking about a very rich tree with many, many, many branches, and everything that's alive today has a common ancestor if you go back far enough, right? So humans and other apes have a common ancestor that's very recent because we're very, very genetically similar. Humans and chimpanzees, it's only 10 million, 12 million or something years ago was the common ancestor. But we can go all the way back to even jellyfish if we go back 600 million years, and even trees and fungi if we go back quite a bit further to unicellular life. Obviously, the kingdoms of life branched off when life was entirely unicellular, but even still, we can go back on the tree of life all the way there too. So just helping people understand the tree of life and phylogeny, that's huge. And then helping them understand genetics and, what is DNA? What is right? What is transcription and translation? What is a gene? What is mutation? What does mutation mean? Right? How do changes to the genome occur? What does that mean for embryonic development? Just taking them through that process so that people can understand when there are changes to the genome, what does that mean for an organism? What are the changes? What are the phenotypic changes that we can see due to the change to the genome? Right? What is possible and what have we observed and that kind of thing.
Let's talk a bit about going back to how you defined creationism. You split it up into 8 types. I think we have a graphic for that. There you go. And you label them from least unscientific to most unscientific. And there are so many labels you can give someone who believes the universe was created by a deity. And I'm curious, how did you choose to define these 8 categories? And do you see beliefs in creationism as something that simply just gets whittled down the more science you learn?
I do think that. Yeah, I think that when you, most people are indoctrinated into this belief system, and when you're a child, you don't learning about geology and biology and chemistry and physics. This is something that happens gradually throughout your childhood, and really with no actual rigor until the high school level. So only once you're in ninth grade, we're supposed to all take biology. In 10th grade, we're all supposed to take chemistry, and this is when you learn that with even moderate rigor how we know all of this stuff, right? So if you've been indoctrinated as a young person, then that creates some friction there. But I do see the trajectory for a lot of creationists as sort of gradually coming out of it. I think that there are people who are young Earth creationists that then sort of evolve, so to speak, into gap creationism or day age creationism, where they say, okay, well, 7 days in the Bible, but what's a day? It could be a billion years. It could be this or that. And just slowly learning more about empirical science until they cast aside, the unscientific aspects of their ideology. But in terms of those actual categories, I did do some Google searching and looked at different sources to see what everybody said in terms of how these beliefs can be delineated, and then I put them in order myself in terms of how much science is being denied. Right, young Earth creationism is a denial of virtually all. Well, flat Earth geocentrism is a denial of pretty much all science ever. Young Earth creationism accepts a spherical Earth. So it's slightly less stupid. But then you get these funny, these ad hoc adjustments like gap creationism and day age creationism and progressive creationism, where they're just starting to go, okay, well, maybe this part of science is true, but God still went poof magic and all this stuff. And then intelligent design is just kind of like creationism in a tuxedo. It's entirely a propaganda movement. It's creationism rebranded to try to infiltrate the intellectual sphere, and then graduating to theistic evolution, deistic evolution, where we're no longer even really denying science. It's just a God-centered view of the universe, which
I think my father went through some of that progression that you mentioned, because when I was raised, we went to a Catholic church for a large portion of my childhood, and my dad has become less and less religious, but he just can't let go of that God idea. So now God is just like this. It's just this being that radiates and created the universe, maybe not, and it's this presence that's everywhere. So you just kind of, the more science you learn, it just whittles that down until you're left with this vague sort of thing that you just can't let go of. And like, what does that say about your belief? If the more you learn, the more whittled it down it goes.
I mean, and that's nice though. I mean, that vagueness doesn't scare me. Like, I don't think for a second like I'm really worried about these people who believe in science and evolution, but then go, hey, maybe, and like, cool, maybe, probably not, but go for it. That's not really.
Yeah, I can't imagine there'd be as many church-state separation issues if that was the case.
No.
If that was the case,
definitely.
For a lot
I mean,
of
same
people.
thing with state-church separation. There's tons of religious people who are like, yes, these are all my personal beliefs, but I'm not going to push them onto other people or try to force them on other people. It's sort of that version within the science. This distinction that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I would imagine your video series, Dave, it doesn't necessarily challenge religious people to challenge. It doesn't necessarily invite religious people to challenge their own beliefs in a God per se, but it does invite them to challenge certain parts about their belief system.
Sure.
I'm
only concerned with that which is a threat to the social fabric, right?
Sure.
Anything that threatens the separation of church and state, this is terrible. We have to combat this. This is pressing. But simply believing in a God, who cares, right? I don't. I'm an atheist. I presumably you guys are too. Yeah. But I don't care, right? There's plenty of people in my life who believe in God, and it's not an issue. It's about combating anti-science beliefs, right? Belief systems and ideologies that specifically contradict empirical science, and how people are trying to implement that ideology into the public sphere in a way that is unconstitutional. That's the focus here, right?
Yeah, just taking a step back on this project, this was clearly a very ambitious project for you. I'm curious, how long did the video take to make, and what were some of the biggest challenges in putting it together?
Uh, I mean, it didn't take as long as you would expect because I have been talking about all of these things for years now. So, in making it, I definitely pulled from every creationist debunk I've ever done, and so with the Discovery Institute content, there's the more sophisticated arguments that have to be debunked. Waiting time problem and all. Irreducible complexity and all these things. So there's those things, and then talking to like Kent Hovind and things that he says, and like what preachers say. So I just sort of took everything that I could, thought of some other things to put in the middle. I mean, I'd say it took maybe a week to write and maybe 2 weeks to animate or something, the 5-part series, which is longer than most of my content, but it was a bulkier product that I was putting out. It's about 3 hours of content, I think. So, but not too, a few weeks, I'd say.
Yeah, and even though it was 3 hours, it was so long. Like when I first looked, as I watched it, I thought, wow, this is so long. But then after watching it, I was like, wow, that was just so comprehensive. I mean, I felt like I was like, wow, that was like taking, what would be like an evolution, the evolution part of like a,
It's a real crash course.
like a high school class, and like you
Sure.
condensed it into 3 hours, and but like seemed to cover, I think, everything.
key
I would
points,
thought.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and just obviously worked really well for someone like me who did learn about evolution in school when I was younger, but like forgets a lot of those specifics, and so watching it, I'm just like, oh, this
Sure.
is great. Oh yeah, that I forgot about that. This or that
Right.
or whatever. So it was really nice.
Easy resource. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the goal. So I'm glad to hear that feedback. Yeah.
Well, let's turn to some audience questions. We are going live, so we have a few questions from our audience here. We covered this a little bit, but have you received backlash for your videos, and how did you respond to that kind of criticism? And of course, you have made videos responding to criticism you have, but let's say maybe like if you get some really harsh criticism for this creationist debunk video, how do you usually go about that?
Yeah, I'm attacked on a minute-to-minute basis on
We know how that
on
feels,
YouTube.
Dave.
So, yeah, sure. No, I'm so oversaturated with trolling and personal attacks that I'm numb to it at this point. So it just doesn't really affect me. I definitely block trolls liberally. And sometimes engage as well because I like to get into the trenches, and if I feel that it is a troll or a bot or something, I will disregard. But if it's somebody that is coming from a genuine place but is really upset and attacking me, I will sometimes engage for a moment and say, where am I wrong? Where am I wrong? Where am I wrong? Stop talking about how mean I am. Where am I wrong? Where am I wrong? Mm-hmm. And just kind of force them to reckon with the fact that they don't have any ability to, even say anything concrete, let alone refute anything that I've said in the video. And honestly, they didn't watch it. So, really, truly, none of them actually watch the content. It's kind of a theme among the haters. I just continue to say, where am I wrong? Where am I wrong? They can never answer.
I have seen some criticisms of you of how you kind of tend to go into attack mode. But from my perspective, you tend to only really go after people in a way when you feel like they deserve it.
Sure.
Like if
yes.
like flat earther people, like why bother having patience for that kind of belief system, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I speak to people as they deserve to be spoken to, and if you are a grifting fraud that is taking advantage of a gullible viewership to earn money on the internet, which is flat earth grifters, which is Kent Hovind and preachers that try to start their own little cults. No, these people are doing damage to the societal fabric. They are grifters. They are liars. They are frauds. They will be treated as such. I'm not advocating that they be thrown in jail, or I'm not advocating physical violence, but I will verbally humiliate them into submission because that is exactly what they deserve.
Who was it that recently invited some flat earthers to go on a plane trip to, what was it, Iceland?
To Antarctica.
Antarctica, yeah, sorry. And then somebody went and made a video saying, I was wrong, and of course, there's always a way to spin that into...
Yeah. So the
you
flat
just always hold on to
earthers,
the grift no matter what.
Yeah. Flat earthers for years have been saying that there's no 24-hour sun in Antarctica. And finally, somebody said, let's go. I'm paying. I'll pay for you guys to go. Almost all of them universally were making excuses to not go, even though they've been saying for years, we need to explore Antarctica. Right? NASA is going to try to stop us, but we can go and we'll find the dome or whatever. And two prominent flat earthers plus two other flat earthers that I were not prominent, but two of them went, and they were there, and they live streamed the 24-hour sun, and they said, yeah, there's the 24. We were wrong. There it is. You can see it. And they were promptly excommunicated from the cult. They are now shills, paid shills, and obviously, what do you expect? And they're now experiencing the backlash from the community that they helped to cultivate, and seeing how incredibly toxic and pathetic and delusional they are, which is just hilarious to me.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of brings up another thing that I just wanted to bring up with you. And one thing that I find so important about your videos is just that how do we distinguish or help people distinguish like real science, because like there are lots of people. I mean, you look at like RFK Jr. stuff, like he claims to be a man of science and will cite you some studies. He often won't show you what they are, but how do normal people kind of distinguish between like, oh, your video is the truth, but and obviously if you're directly talking about like a Kent Hovind video, that can be, but if you're not talking about the same thing, like how do we help people know whether the science they're hearing is real or not generally?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? How do we help people know what is true? I mean, I think that's the main reason that I'm still so dedicated to providing purely academic tutorials that are outside of the context of neutralizing any particular toxic figure, that are outside of any kind of political context, that are just purely, look, this is what you learn in Biology 101. This is what you learn in Geology 101. Don't take my word for it, right? Compare it to syllabi. Go search and look at syllabi. Go look at resources that any university course is offering here, right? What could this possibly have to do with this kind of hot button culture war issue? It's just some stuff we know, right? Mm. And I really encourage people to become just barely conversant, right? Just minimally conversant in the basic concepts of as many scientific fields as possible, where we're talking about a high school level of literacy in physics, chemistry, biology, et cetera, the primary scientific fields. That alone is enough to discern 90% of the disinformation, genuinely. It really is. 90% of the disinformation is so transparently idiotic and contradicts basic principles of science that you can see it like that, right? I'm not an expert in any scientific field. I know a lot about chemistry because I studied that, but I'm not an expert in geology or any of these things. And yet I can spot 90% of this stuff. That last 10% that's more sophisticated, we're all in the same boat, right? We all are to some extent trusting experts. But I think that if you learn to look at as many sources as possible, compare as many sources as possible, try to think about the motives behind the people who are posting this content, right? We may all slip up once in a while, but if we get that broad knowledge base and we are rigorous and conscientious and look at many sources and compare, we're going to get there 90% of the time. Might still get tricked once in a while, but this is the best we can do,
Yeah, no, that's a great answer.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions for you. First, how do you communicate with people who do still believe in creationism and are questioning their beliefs in a way that doesn't cause arguments? Or is that even possible?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that you got to take on a case-by-case basis, right? If we're talking, I mean, I don't personally interact with creationists face-to-face regularly. I don't know any, you know what I mean? And the ones that come to my channel are angry at me and yelling. So there's not too much productive that can go on there. If you're talking about somebody that's in your family, certainly, yeah, you're coming at it from a place of empathy, coming at it a place of understanding and patience, but ideally persistence, right? It's up to you how much you want to potentially damage your relationship with that person, because some people may get very angry, and for me, I put truth above all else. So it's like I'm not afraid to lose relationships if it comes down to that. But I don't have people like that in my personal sphere. I just it's not that I go out of my way to avoid them. I just I live in a city and I deal with I interact primarily with educated people, so I just don't run into them very often. But unfortunately, there's no just like fast and easy response. Like, it just comes down to the psychology of that person, your particular relationship with that person. Just tread carefully, but if you want to help them, maybe just be persistent and push it a little bit.
All right. We got one last question for you, and this relates to some of the work we do here at the FFRF. Currently, many school districts in America are facing challenges from Christian nationalists attempting to bring religion into classrooms via Ten Commandments displays, Bible classes, and programs that would have students leave class for religious instruction. Do you have any ideas or suggestions for parents and teachers who are concerned about their students' secular education being eroded?
Yeah, that's, I mean, such an excellent question. Obviously, it's so hard. I'm just some guy on YouTube, and so I don't have a sophisticated knowledge of the bureaucracy of how this all gets determined and things. I would say just be very vocal, right? Speak to board members, right? Speak to administrators at the school, speak to local politicians, make your voice heard, be loud, right? Be loud and vocal to an annoying degree if you must, because the evangelicals certainly are. They're very loud and try their best to get their way. So we need to be the same, right? We need to be just as forceful as them in keeping religion out of public schools. It has no place there. It is factually unconstitutional, right? There's no argument for it. There's no argument for putting 10 Commandments in a public school. There's no argument for teaching creationism in biology class. There's no argument for it. It's all straw men and evasive tactics and distortions of facts. So we have all the facts on our side. We just need to be, at times even a little bit belligerent, I think. We shouldn't be afraid to make our voices heard, because they sure aren't. So,
and as a person of science, it may have seemed silly to you to start debunking videos on flat earthers, but if people like you don't take on that challenge, then the flat earthers just pour all of that stuff into the internet and nobody's responding, and then we all lose track of the plot.
Yeah, fortunately, flat Earth is so unbelievably stupid that it has never and will never gain a whole lot of traction. Mm-hmm. It's so ridiculous that even young Earth creationists mock it. Yeah. That's how dumb it is. So, but the thing is that the ideology, like the baseless contrarianism, the blind faith, the ignoring entire bodies of science, right? The cult-like mentality.
The willful ignorance.
That's a common thread. The willful ignorance, absolutely, yeah. That's a common thread amongst most science denial. It's just that flat Earth itself is so incredibly stupid that it's just never gonna. And in fact, post this Antarctica trip, who knows? I think it's kind of imploding. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it seems like a beast that you just can't get rid of. But
well, at least that one's small enough that we can just take every single flat Earth person to Antarctica. Some of the ones are too big. We're not going to get the millions of people, but
But they won't go.
Right. But it's just right. The flat Earth thing.
The famous ones. They refused the trip, right?
Yeah, I was joking.
Yeah. Well, flat Earth. It's just a good example of how poorly educated beliefs can just hold on, despite reality. And I mean, I think you could say that for creationism to a point too. But we appreciate that series. We invite our viewers to check it out, and that'll bring it to the end of our show today. So thank you, Dave, for coming on to talk to us this week. Can you tell our viewers where they can follow your work?
Professor Dave Explains on YouTube.
Nice and simple. All right. Yep. Well, that wraps up this week's episode of FFRF's Ask an Atheist. A new episode of our broadcast TV show, Free Thought Matters, airs this weekend. Co-presidents Annie Laurie Gaylor and Dan Barker will speak with astrophysicist Kelsey Johnson and we'll address the question, is the universe fine-tuned for life?
I think the word skepticism has been co-opted by modern colloquial language to mean that you're just dismissive of everything. And that's not what scientists mean when we say we're skeptical. When we say we're skeptical in science, what we mean is that we prefer there to be evidence. Tell us your crazy ideas. Let's think about them. But skeptical means that we're just not going to swallow everything hook, line, and sinker unless we have sufficient justification. So, if we think about this in terms of epistemology and what it means to know something, it's this overlap of things being true, you believing them, and most importantly for science, those things being justifiable and what counts as justification.
I think Professor Dave will like that one. You'll be able to watch that episode on TV stations around the country this weekend and soon on the FFRF YouTube channel.
And don't miss our weekly radio show, Free Thought Radio. You can find Free Thought Radio at ffrf.org/radio or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to check out the latest episode of We Dissent, the only podcast hosted exclusively by women constitutional lawyers discussing state-church separation. Listen and subscribe to We Dissent wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out online at we-dissent.org.
Finally, if you want more information about the Freedom from Religion Foundation, you can check us out online at ffrf.org. If you're a member already, thank you very much. If not, please consider joining us, and we'll see you next time on FFRF's Ask an Atheist.